Hi, I'm Granny, and we're going down the rabbit hole of UFOs. Actually, one that I saw a long time ago. Many years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was living on the west side of Tucson, west of the Tucson Mountains. It was late on a Sunday evening, a couple hours after sunset, and I was traveling from a friend's home to my home on Sandario Road. As I was traveling west on Valencia through the Tucson Mountains, where at that time there were a variety of isolated homes. Most were on several acres of land with cattle and horses. It was common to have a tall pole with a light at the top. This is often seen on small and large farms or ranches. A strange-looking light caught my attention because of a slightly different color to it. I could see it out of my windshield in the upper right-hand corner. It was more orange than the usual white or yellow, and as I continued to glance at it as I'm driving down the road, I soon noticed that instead of getting closer to it, it seemed to be moving around the same speed I was. At the time, I was driving an old orange-yellow bug Volkswagen. Sorry. As I was approaching Ajo Road, I decided to stop and watch this weird light. At Ajo Road and Valencia dead ends. Directly across from me was a field belonging to Ryan Airfield with its rotating airport beacon. The strange light continued forward and stopped directly in front of me in the middle of a field, about 50 feet above ground. I had considered the strange light being a hot air balloon, which was frequently seen around Ryan Airfield, but never at night. I thought there must be a light in the basket of the balloon shining up on something that made that orange color. Anyway, as I was watching this strange light, the orange colors were changing shapes and hues, reminding me of the lava or mood lamps common in the 1960s. As the airport beacon continued to rotate, I then could see the outline of this strange light because the beacon was reflecting off the object. And so the object was hard enough to the light from the beacon bounced off. So I could kind of see that it was round and that there wasn't anything underneath it or at the top, like I had thought it might be with like a basket of the hot air balloon, which is really strange. As I was there sitting, looking at this thing, trying to figure out what it was that I was looking at, it occurred to me that I hadn't passed any cars at all, and I couldn't see any cars in the area, and I was out in the middle of nowhere by myself looking at a very bizarre object which was hovering above the ground with no visible signs of propulsion. My windows were down and I couldn't hear a sound. Only very eerie, frightening silence. Not being able to recognize a strange metal ball levitating 50 feet above ground, not making a sound, not seeing another human being, and being about 15 miles from home, I suddenly was afraid. I turned west on Ajo and put my pedal to the metal, but I was in a bug, which its greatest speed on a flat surface was about 60 miles an hour, so I felt like I was moving very slowly. I was clearly freaked out, and nothing in my life could explain what was happening. I didn't get very far when I noticed the strange glowing ball was again in the upper right-hand corner of my windshield. It stayed there until I turned north on Sandario Road, and while speeding north at 60 miles an hour, I looked in my driver's side mirror, and I could see the ball going across Sandario and then started moving north. I decided I wouldn't go straight home, but would stop off at my neighbor's, which I did. I turned off Sandario Road, and as I was driving down the road to my friend's house, I could see the orange ball in my rearview mirror, and it had stopped again. At my neighbor's house, I jumped out, ran onto the porch, and banged on their door, pleading for them to come out onto the porch and look at the thing that had been following me. So there were probably 10 people that came out onto the porch, some as young as 10, and 5 or 6 adults, all standing there looking at what I asked them to look at and not understanding what they were looking at, just like me. So as we're standing there looking at this, it slowly lowered and disappeared into the mesquites. Yeah. Everyone was confused, but none were brave enough to go out and see to investigate further. We all agreed that it would be best to wait for daylight, and we would check it out when we got home from work the next day. The following day, we wanted to check out what was happening to the orange ball, and we went to that area, and we spent about an hour looking around where it possibly had landed. It had rained recently, so there should have been marks of some kind, human or vehicle, and it was even clear of animal signs. Nothing. Absolutely undisturbed soil. No landing gear, no footprints, nothing. And we all were a bit confused. I wanted to talk to my dad about my experience. He had learned to fly in World War II and continued to keep his license up to date, and so I figured maybe he could give me some insight. I shared my experience, and he quietly listened, nodding his head. And after a while, he then said, anyone who has ever flown for any length of time and claims to have never seen a UFO is lying. What does that mean? I've had a long time to consider this experience and have concluded nothing. A large majority of UFOs appear to be near Air Force bases, and I have periodically imagined a young pilot giggling, thinking and knowing how scared I was as he was following me in the middle of nowhere. But I've also learned there are many times in our life we are left with no answers, which is where I'm leaving you. No answers. Thanks for spending this time with me. Please join me again when Granny goes down the rabbit hole. Thank you.